The lights are off and away they go.
Extremely loose. He's managed to hold on and they get
He missed the pit complete. That is crazy stuff.
Side Freitas is on the grass on the infield floor. He slides through. He tags Richard Eck.
Stepped onto new soil at the freshly rebuilt Kansas Speedway. Patrick Pieri capitalized on the absence of key drivers and took pole while Brian Strodbeck completed the front row. In ST, Carl Williamson qualified first, while James Stevenson began in second. When the green flag fell, the start was clean for both classes. However, the first major incident was on lap 7 when Ray Prado and Steve Brown tangled under braking for turn 1. Prado continued, but Brown's car required serious attention. Eventually, the first caution emerged on lap 8 when Heng Ho Tao and David Whamon came together, leaving Tao stranded. Williamson made a risky call on strategy and let go of the lead to top up under yellow. This meant Stevenson inherited first in the ST class at the restart. When green returned, the drivers didn't even reach turn 1 before an incident unfolded between Wes Eric and Ed Verras. Vieri began to feel the pressure from Brian as he tried to find a way past. Finally, the number 7 slipped himself into first with a smooth overtake at turn 1. Interclass traffic was beginning to prove ever more difficult, and drivers were left to scramble. Finally, Clayson found himself caught out as the third-place driver tagged an early braking Vieri. Cannonball took the bad end of the stick on damage, but it went from bad to worse for the red and white number 32 when Vieri got a slowdown penalty for cutting the course in the infield. The ST lead also changed hands with Stefan Oergaard relieving his teammate of the top spot. By now, Williamson had caught up to the pair and quietly prowled behind the AMS cars for multiple laps. The red and black MX-5 picked off his competitors one by one, James for second on lap 22, then Stefan for the lead on lap 24. Most drivers elected to pit at roughly the halfway point in the race. Vieri worked some pit road magic and jumped his red and white machine ahead of both Cannonball and Strodbeck. But on lap 33, Brian repeated his earlier move to slot back into first. Meanwhile, Williamson's early strategy call proved to work a treat as a short fuel splash and dash released him easily ahead of Stevenson. But as always, the Conti series keeps everyone on their toes with the unpredictable cautions. Carpenter's car was stranded after crippling damage from a hit with Tom Eckline. The field was now bunched and the green returned with only 10 minutes on the clock. Brian and Patrick resumed as they were for the GS lead, but the final podium spot was still hotly contested. On lap 51, it all came to a head and the V-Apex teammates removed each other from the equation. The clock ticked down and finally, with only 4 minutes left, Vieri went on the attack. Lap after lap, the Swiss driver threw everything he had at the American. But when it all counted, Strodbeck held the front and took the checkers with only a tenth of a second to spare. Vieri notched up another podium while Elliott Huffman grabbed third. Meanwhile, in ST, Stevenson had latched onto the back of Williamson and the two quickly left the field in the dust. The calculating Aussie stayed the course all the way until the white flag, and when the two entered the oval, the draft battle was on. Carl stayed low, but the slingshot was just enough, and James claimed yet another ST-class victory. Behind them, Oergaard mistakenly thought the race was over and entered the pits a lap early. Matthew Reinhold drove past for a quiet but lucky race to complete the podium. As unloved as Kansas may be by the drivers, the fans got an incredible show. Now the season is nearing the end and the teams must tame one of the most legendary sports car tracks in the world. Just like the daunting corkscrew, the championship may still have twists and turns yet to be revealed as the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series gets ready to take on Laguna Seca. Welcome to Laguna Seca, home of Round 10 in the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series, and we're bringing it to you live on the Global SimRacing channel. I'm Joe Peak. With me in the booth today is the knowledgeable Richard Losper. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening, Joe.
Also with us is our British transplant, Samuel Ryman. Glad to have you here today, Sam.
Great to be here, Joe.
And as always, Giancarlo Lenzi is our director behind the scenes, pointing the cameras at all the best action on the track. As we mentioned, we're at Laguna Seca today, and this track is either loved or loathed by many. I'm going to hand it over to Richard Losper to tell us just a little bit more about this track, though.
Yes, and if you ask me, Joe, I'm one of those who loathes this track. I cannot get any kind of decent time on here. But for the purists, it's 2.2 miles long. There are 11 corners, including the infamous, or should I say famous, corkscrew, and turn 6, I believe it is, which is a turn that everybody has their hearts in their mouths when they take it. And we have in front of us here a 90-minute race. So it's going to be good. The guys who like this track, and I know for sure that James Stevenson, because he said it on one of our broadcasts, is not. This is not one of his favorites. So I'm looking for in ST for some challenges from people like Dexter and perhaps even Marco Mogren and some of the others as well. So it's going to be a good race. I'm really, really looking forward to it, Joe.
It's sure to throw up some unexpected results with how challenging it is, that's for sure. But as far as the championship, the results are pretty much expected since day one, it seems. I'm going to go to Sam Ryman. What's the positions looking like in GS currently?
Well, Kimmo Swarmanen has 315 points, but it's a differential between him and the rest of the field that is most worth noting. He has about 40 points over Patrick Beery and Dan Rash, who only have 1 point between them in that battle for second. It's kind of hard to explain the entire point scenario because we have to bring drop weeks into this situation, but fact of the matter is, after today there's only going to be one race left in the season. If Kimmo Swarmanen can pull off a good result today, guys, he should be able to wrap up the championship, if not be very close to it. Drummond and Nathaniel fourth in the points, 83 points back, and Russell Clayson is 114 points back, but he got a podium here last year, so maybe he'll have a good race. As far as the ST field looks like, I believe James Stevenson has wrapped this championship up. He has 312 points, 71 points more than Stefan Overgaard. Ed Varas back sitting in third, Matt Rhino and Tom Eckline tied for fourth place on the points, so there's battles going on throughout the entire field, Joe.
As there will be probably in the race, I'm sure. Well, I'm a bit opposite to Richard. I love this track. This is easily one of my favorites. And we're going to take a little bit of a lap guide around here with Kevin Brown behind the wheel. So if our director wants to spool that up, let's see how that race goes. All right, let's do a lap around Laguna Seca with Kevin Brown. Coming out of this final corner, it's extremely important to get as good as an exit as you can, because turn 2 is one of the best passing zones around here. Coming across the start-finish line, you'll see turn 1 here is kind of a non-corner, but it's still very blind. Just don't go over the pit exit there. Heavy braking for 2. It's going to be very easy to get wide. You want to hit both apexes here. There's one, and then he's got the other. Then you're going to let it track out to the right and bring it right back to the left side for 3. That's just a light stab of the brakes, and the car's going to push on the exit. You don't want to get on the gas too early. Now, turn 4 is very hairy. You don't want to clobber this inside red bump here, and you're going to see a lot of guys push wide like Kevin does here. If they get greedy on the gas, that's going to cause some accidents right there. Now, heavy braking for 5. The big thing about this corner is you'll want to carry as much momentum up the hill as you can. Get on the gas as soon as you can there. Now 6 is just a stab the brakes and pray sort of corner. Can't see that apex until the last second. Don't go wide. Don't hit the bump on the inside or you're going to be sent to the outside barriers. Keep your momentum up this hill once again. Stay to the left until the last second, then bring it right. Straighten it out. Brake. Can't see anything into the corkscrew. Down the hill you go. And you want to get it back to the right side for rainy curves. Stay to the right. Now bring it in for the apex, so it's a very late apex here. It's going to track out. Be careful not to get the dirt. Turn 10 is very heavily banked. You're going to be able to carry a lot of momentum. And then you're going to get the car back to the right again. Another possible passing zone into turn 11. And get it through there. And like I said, get on the gas as soon as you can without sending it to the inside concrete walls. And that's a lap around Laguna Seca. Well, I love seeing cars around here, especially the Mustang. It's a bit of a squirrely one. Doesn't like to turn that well, but it's always fun to see it make its way around here. Well, one of the major stories of this race, besides generally the difficulty of the track, Richard, I have to say is going to be the traffic. It always is a mess here. There's very few places to pass, and I think these guys are going to have to keep their eyes very wide for the whole time.
Absolutely. The track, it looks like it's wide enough, but because of all the turns, it really doesn't have that much room for passing. And all the GS drivers are going to come up on ST cars on a turn somewhere. So it's going to be, give and take. And let's hope that they can get through cleanly without too many cautions.
And speaking of cautions and messy approaches, Sam, one of the things we were talking about was the pit entry from last season. It seems it's not as easy as it looks.
No, it's a very tight corner into pit entry, but you've got a decent length straight going down into that turn. You'd figure the drivers would have plenty of time to get it in their heads, hey, I've got to slow down to make this sharp corner, but we saw that last year that wasn't the case, and a lot of drivers pull in a similar move to what Formula One's David Coulthard did back in 1995 it was in Adelaide, where they just come too hot into pit entry and hit the wall on the outside. I believe the drivers who did it last season, though, only got minor damage and were able to continue. So hopefully, if anyone does it today, their days won't be too badly spoiled.
Yeah, we'd hate to see someone go out in that sort of fashion. We like to see cars make it all the way to the end. You know, the more the merrier, as they say. One of the other things that I have found interesting in this championship as it's progressed is Patrick Bieri slowly moving up the ranks. This is his rookie season, Richard, and yet he's in second. He's ahead of Dan Rash at this point in the points.
Absolutely. Pardon me. Patrick Bieri has impressed us race upon race. He's fast, he can keep it on the road, and he's proven that by consistency, he's racked up a lot of points, and he's second in the championship. So good on him for the way that he's approached this season.
Yes, it's certainly paid dividends, especially compared to some of the other drivers who haven't been able to keep it together the whole distance of the season. Especially Dan Rash, who's ran into a fair bit of trouble. At least this way around. It definitely has not been a repeat of last season where he just basically romped to the championship win. Some of the other things that we should bring up possibly, we mentioned that James Stevenson has wrapped up the championship. He cannot be overtaken mathematically, so he has pulled that one off yet again. I believe this is his third championship in the CESCS. However, Overgaard still hasn't quite got it wrapped up for second, but it's going to be a very tall task for Ed Verras, Richard.
Absolutely, and we really need to talk about Ed Verras. Very impressive throughout the season. Not one of the top guys by any means, certainly running around in the mid-pack mostly, but he, again, as we just mentioned, has proven that by being consistent and being there at the end of each race, you can get enough points, and he is currently sitting in third place, which is great for him, and good on him for doing that.
Absolutely. Now, Sam, I'm curious, well, actually, I mostly know, but our viewers are curious. What are the places on the track that are possibly most known for the attrition? What are the places that they should watch out for and kind of keep an eye on where drivers have the most trouble and are most likely to catch these guys out?
Well, the infamous or famous term, whichever way you want to look at it, is the corkscrew. You come over the crest of a hill at the end of a straight, you take a left, you take a right, you're going downhill about 50 feet within a matter of 5 seconds, and it's tricky enough to do it one car. Nonetheless, a whole field of about 23, 24 of them we have today. But really, Joe, the turn I find more tricky is turn 6, because there is a racing line through there, but it's so fast and so narrow that if you're just a millimetrically off to the left or to the right a little bit, it can toss your car out into the gravel trap on the right or the left, and there are vicious tire walls on the side of the track ready to dispose of your car. Also, another turn I'd be watching is that turn 1. We saw actually a deciding factor, well, not really a deciding factor, but changes for the lead happened here last year in turn 1, where the accordion effect came into play on different laps, and the drivers, the leaders, ran into each other. So turn 1, turn 6, and the corkscrew, they're where I think we're going to see the action today.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because actually one face that we haven't seen a whole lot of except for 2 weeks ago recently, who is back yet again, is Dexter Castro, Richard, and he and James seem to have a bit of a history, which Sam briefly touched on there.
Absolutely. We will remember that Dexter and James Stevenson came together in turn 1, I believe, and Dexter got the better of that encounter. But then in turn 6, I think it was, he put it out into the gravel trap, as was just mentioned by Samuel, and then he was overtaken again. And another person who was involved in last season's race in that encounters was our own Ayrton Ellis, if you remember. He's not racing today, so he's not a factor. Now, taking into account in ST, Dexter Castro has the fastest qualifying time, so James Stevenson will have his work cut out. And James Stevenson being like, he's got the championship sewn up, all he has to do is race for position and you know, get a decent finish. But that's not the James Stevenson that we know, so he's going to be out there battling to beat Dexter Castro for sure. And it remains to be seen. I think it's going to make for some exciting racing, Joe.
Yeah, and you know, I'm pretty sure, since James doesn't really have any championship to worry about, he's going to just go for wins from here on out. So, I mean, it should be a good one, because Dexter has nothing to lose. He's got no championship to fight for. James has nothing to lose, and both of these are hard-charging guys. And James isn't a loose cannon, but I guess you could possibly label Dexter as that. So it's could make for some sparks, and we always love to have a little bit of drama, even though we don't encourage it here. But it should make for an interesting.
Why not?
Why
a little
not?
bit of drama makes it more exciting for the viewers, and certainly gives us a lot to talk about. So why not?
Well, we like to have things to talk about. Otherwise, what would our job be? But Marco Mogren is kind of up there too, and we're going to go through qualifying once everything is wrapped up here, folks, so don't worry, we'll get to that. Marco Mogren's kind of in the mix. He's been in and out throughout the season. He's got a win so far, so he's got one under his belt. His confidence is up. I mean, how do you fare his chances, Richard?
Well, Marco Mogren has been the find of the season, I believe, in this certainly in this series. He's fast. He's young, I believe, and is full of bravado. So look for him to start mixing it up with the likes of Dexter and James as well. Matthew Reinl, very useful driver. William Randleman in there as well. You know, all the names that we used to talking about. But these guys, I'm telling you, they're going to give us a good race today.
So we've got about a few seconds left in qualifying. We're going to let that wrap up, as I said, and once they get to the grid, we'll read out how it's finished up, as it looks like the checkers have just come out. Since that's going on, I want to get you guys' calls for the day. Sam, who do you think's going to have it?
Well, funnily enough, at Laguna Seca last year, Dan Rash dominated the GS race and James Stevenson won the ST race. Well, guess what? They were both the series champions last season. I've got to be honest, I think the season champions are going to win this race. And by that, I mean, if Kimmo Swaminanen wins this race, I have a feeling he's going to win the championship. So I'm going to say really the obvious picks, Kimmo for GS and James Stevenson for ST.
Richard, who's your money on?
Well, I think I just looked at the GS times there. Kimmo Suminen has moved up to second place now in the qualifying. Dan Rash, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he likes this track. So I'm thinking that Dan Rash might win it this time. And in the ST class, I like Dexter Castro to win here today.
It's a brave call from you on Dexter, I have to admit. You know, I'm going to have to go with Marco Mogren as a bit of a dark horse, and also because you guys picked the other two fast people. And then, you know, Todd Honzarenko doesn't have his maiden win yet, so I don't think he's out of this thing for the GS class. So you never know. He could take advantage of some of the difficulty of this course and other guys going off. Cars are now getting ready to line up on the grid, placing themselves in their spot. So let's go through the GS standings real quick here. Dan Rash took the pole with Kimmo Swaminanen rounding out the front row. Todd Honzarenko is starting in third. Eric Smith is beginning in fourth. Then starting the third row, we have German Fanador in fifth. Patrick Bieri is starting in sixth. Russell Clayson a bit out of place, starting in seventh. Alexis Molina in eighth. Steve Brown starting in ninth, and 10th is James Alex Brown. What's the rest of the GS class looking like, Samuel? Sorry about that.
Reno Tani in the 83 in 11th. Switch the 8 and the 3 around and you get the number 38. That's Jeff Jacobs starting in 12th. Jonathan Auger starting 13th. And then a name I've never heard of before, Fernando Fireball, is lined up in 14th, although I don't see him gridded up right now. Ray Prey, though, may round out, and there is Fernando Fireball, just took his starting spot. Ray Prey, though, would be 15th on the grid, but I don't see his car either. And then it's the ST field, Richard.
Yes, and on the pole position in ST is none other than Dexter Castro. Alongside him is James Stevenson. 3/10 between them, roughly, more than 3/10. So he's qualified a fair bit better than James. Marco Mogren is in the 3rd place with Matthew Reinhold lining up next to him. On the 3rd row, we have William Randleman and Jared Lawson. In the 4th row, it's David Wammond and Philip Carpenter. Ed Voras, who we spoke about as we see the cars moving off on the pace lap. Ed Voras is bringing up row 5 with Tom Eckline. And last, but believe me, not least, is Yao Freitas. It's going to be very interesting, Joe, to see how Yao Freitas deals with this race and tries to make up time to the 2 leaders.
And I just want to say in here, none of us picked Freitas for the ST win, so we could all be looking like donkeys at the end of a race.
Yeah, we can't count him out. His last time he raced in this series at Road Atlanta, he had a bit of a tough time, but he certainly seemed to have learned his lesson because he came back in the Blondie series at the same track and ran away with the win. Although he got a bit of luck in that, he definitely was good where others faltered. So he seems like a driver who really is observant and keen and picks up little points where he needs and really improves. But as they make their way around this course, one of the things that I find interesting, Sam, is Eric Smith in 4th. He's a guy who hasn't been back in a while. He had to take a break for school, but he's back in the series. He's yet to get his first win here, but he's usually had the speed. I mean, do you think he can hold it together today?
Well, we got 2nd here last year, so you would think yes, but honestly, experience is a bit of a virtue, and you got Kimmo Suominen and Todd Hensarenko up there in front of him. These are 3 big guys starting in front of Eric Smith, 3 very fast drivers. I'm not saying you can't do it, but if he does, he is gonna have his work cut out for him.
Very much so. They're coming around the carousel right now. So they're getting ready to take the green soon as the pace car leads them up, and they're getting lined up 2 by 2 as we speak. This is going to be a tricky start because they've got that hairpin right before the start-finish line, and some guys who are farther back could possibly get caught out. We'll have to see how late the green flag comes out. Pace car has ducked in. They're taking that sharp final left-hander as Kimmo gets a little bit back. He'll have to bring his car back up there. And he was a little far back when the green comes out, but they're taking off towards the start-finish line. Eric Smith got a very good start, and he's got nowhere to go with it, though, as his momentum is ruined. Coming down past turn 1 into turn 2, the Andretti hairpin. How are they going to take this one? Everyone brakes hard as the green flag comes out for the ST class, Richard.
Yes, and Dexter Castro on the inside, and outside of him, of course, James Stevenson. They side by side going down to turn 1. Let's see how we go through this first lap. Just behind them, Marco Mogren. James goes pretty wide, giving he either made a mistake or he gave Dexter Castro a lot of room there. Now he closes up once again, gets past Marco Mogren, who briefly was ahead of him. And for the moment, that's your top 3, Joe.
Yeah, it's pretty close behind them, though, as I saw that looked like, who was that? Jarrett Lawson was right on the back of Matthew Reinhold for 4th there, but he's dropped back a bit. In fact, those 3 guys are very close together. It seems like everything so far is pretty safe. I haven't seen any offs in the ST class. Was there any offs in the GS class, Sam?
I saw an off in the ST class, but I'm not surprised that you didn't see it, Joe, because it came out before the green flag ever flew. Ed Veras spun his car in the carousel on the pace lap, which screwed up the back of the ST field and mixed them up a little bit. Freitas, consequently, has already put 4 cars behind him in ST.
So Freitas obviously on the move already, and it looks like he's trying to take William Randleman going side by side through the corkscrew. That was brave for this early in the race. I'm wondering if he's still getting used to these endurance races here, since he comes from a series that's much more sprint races, and his car was wobbling a little bit. I'm not sure if they actually touched and damaged his car, Richard.
No, they did not touch. He's coming up on the back of William Randleman. I expect him to make a move going down the front straight here. He is very fast and he is fearless, Freitas, as we've seen in the Blondie series. These guys go side by side through any corner, they don't care. So he's making the move now on William Randleman. He's on the inside going down the hill to turn 1. And I think he's got that one sewn up. And we got Randleman coming up behind him, nearly touched him, but managed to apply some braking pressure and stop from hitting him. So another spot made up for Freitas. I think we did discount him too early, guys.
Yeah, and that would put him up into 6th, so halfway through the field when a lap is barely over. So, yeah, that's some impressive progress, even with his speed. Up in front of him, it looks like everybody's starting to get single file. Things are really getting sorted out, so everyone's starting to play the patient game, which is probably a good idea around here. Two guys that are pretty close, though, Matthew Reinhold, Jarrett Lawson, we mentioned just a bit earlier. Those guys are fighting for 4th and 5th in the ST class as they go through turn 6 right now, Richard.
Yes, sir, they are. They are indeed fighting for Jarrett Lawson, Matthew Reinhold, and William Randleman are the guys that are battling for, respectively, 4th,
Oh, there's
5th,
been
and
a
6th.
crash in the final corner. Patrick Beery has a lot of damage on the front of his car. He ran into the back of Eric Smith, and that's because Eric Smith was trying to check up for German Afanador. So the accordion effect comes into play. Patrick Beery, as a consequence, has a lot of damage on the front of his car, and Eric Smith is still pointing backwards.
And
Boy,
he was just overtaken there by Russell Clayson. And I believe that was, who was that? That might have been Reno Tani or Alexis Molina, I believe it was. So these guys have overtaken Patrick Vieri. So early days in the race, but he's had a setback, certainly.
Yeah, and thankfully this is not really a track that requires much in the way of aerodynamics, especially from these cars. So I don't think he'll be set back too much unless he hurt his radiator or something and the car starts to overheat. But he's currently got Steve Brown close behind him, so it's not over yet, as it looks like Clayson was looking for a way on the inside of Molina onto turn 6, which is definitely not advisable. But Clayson certainly likes to make some aggressive moves. Let's see if he tries to do one into the corkscrew here, Sam.
That would be suicidal in a way, but yeah, we got a 4-car pack here. There's actually quite a few packs through the GS field. A 3-car pack at the front of the field, but they're all staying single file for now. We'll have to see if the accordion effect comes into play again in the final turn here, because if Alexis Molina makes a mistake, Russell Clayson could find himself turned around by Patrick Beery. Let's hope that doesn't happen. They get through the final turn cleanly, and that's going to be a run down to turn 1, Joe.
And I'm impressed with Todd Honzarenko holding on to these two guys. This is exactly the sort of position that he needs to be on this lead pack here. In fact, he's staying very close behind Kimmo Suominen. So he's making good on this holding on to these guys' pace here. It's very early days. We're only on lap 4, and we're only about 5 minutes into the race, so there's still a lot to go. But if he can just kind of stay with them, maybe pit when these guys do, he could be looking at a podium or possibly even more, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Eric Smith before the start of a race who got involved in that incident. He could still be looking at a podium. Yeah, and there's a battle for 5th here with Alexis Molina, Russell Clayson going on the outside of turn 5. I wouldn't advise it. And Patrick Beery going to look down the inside of Clayson. And here comes Clayson down the inside of Molina for turn 6. Now, one of them's got to give. You cannot go through turn 6 side by side. Molina gives. Clayson takes 5th position. And Patrick Beery remains in 7th for now. But it could all change in a blink of an eye as they come up to the corkscrew. Clayson far out in front. Looks like they're going to stay single file again for now, though, Drew.
Yeah, it looked like Brown had a fairly decent run on Bieri, who's actually got a very good run on Molina, but he's on the outside coming down through the carousel, so it's not going to be able to do much through there. So he just slots back into position. I have to say, Molina looks very unstable on the exits of some of these turns, Sam.
Yeah, meanwhile, I was actually watching a bit of ST action there. Matthew Rhino made a mistake, and Friedrich is now up into fourth. But yeah, I mean, Brewery's one of the fast guys. I believe he's gotten at least one win this season. So, and Molina, I'm not gonna say he's not fast, but usually we see Brewery in front. So I'm sure Patrick at front end nose damage doesn't seem to be bothering him, and he's just going to wait for Molina to make a mistake and then probably begin his charge back up to the front.
Well, it looks like Clayson definitely had the pace on all of those guys, because he is just running away now, and Clayson is actually currently holding down 5th spot, so he's going to want to try and make up from that. His teammate is a little bit of ways ahead, up in 4th, and then from there things are a bit spaced out. In fact, I'm looking back up the leaders, and Dan Rash has actually pulled a fair gap over the other guys there.
Yeah, I didn't really see any moment where the other drivers made a mistake, but let's not forget that Dan Rash won this race by about 40 seconds last year. He's fast here, I believe he likes this track, and why not? He's already got about a 1.5 second lead here, and we're only about 5 laps in, 8 minutes into the race.
Well, we've watched GS for a little bit. We haven't checked back in on ST in a while. Richard, what's going on back there?
Well, at this point in time, Dexter Castro has got a quite a little break on James Stevenson in 2nd place. James seems to be taking it really easy. Marco Mogren is in 3rd, but right behind them is none other than Jao Freitas, who's moved up into the 4th position from dead last in the ST class. And I expect him to be making some moves on Marco and maybe even James in the next 3 or 4 laps, Joe. So he's the big mover in the whole class here.
Boy, I think Sam hit the nail on the head when he mentioned that we really missed out on discounting him, because he's really made good on this run early on in the race. I mean, even though there's a lot to go, it's still impressive to be able to do what he did. And Mogren goes off on the penultimate corner. That allows Freitas to go on past. So Freitas moves up into the podium position only 5 laps in. That is an incredible amount of progress. So Freitas definitely is not out of this race whatsoever as he continues to close in on the back of James Stevenson, Richard.
Yes, sir. And I do believe that of all the drivers, perhaps Jao Freitas likes this track more than the others, because he's certainly quite adept, I should say, at getting around the track. He's got no fear of turn 6. I saw him go into turn 3 earlier on, overtaking a car. So he's proving that this track is to his liking. So I'm going to have to say he's going to feature on the podium, if not looking at least 2nd place. I must also say, Joe, that Dexter Castro is we know that he likes this track as well. And so that is why he always races well here. And it's not surprising that he finished qualifying in top place and is now currently leading. So early days yet. James Stevenson is, I guess you could call him wily. He certainly, has all the talent and also a lot of brains.
We got a spin coming out of a final turn in GS class. James Brown, no one else involved. And James should get going again before the ST field come around. And talking about the different fields, it's not going to be too much longer, Joe, before the GS leaders start lapping the tail end of the ST field.
Yeah, and that's really going to change the dynamic of this race. It's going to be a lot of give and take between these two classes, and guys are going to have to kind of make their move wisely. You can't just go charging through. I think Dan Rash proved that last season and proved it even at other tracks throughout the year, that you got to pick and choose where you try and make your passes and get the cooperation of the other class. In fact, he's coming up on the back of Tom Eckline right now, Dan Rash is. So our leader is definitely getting into the thick of it, as it looks like Kimmo Suominen's coming up on him, and Eckline wisely lets him by on the inside.
Yeah, that's not the best place for Rash to be catching cars, and not a whole lot he can do about that, though. He's going to be really worried in a couple of laps, though, because the next time he catches a lapped ST car, there's 3 of them.
Yeah, and you will remember, guys, if I can jump in here, by the way, we should note that Jao Freitas is right on the back bumper of James Stevenson. Have a look at that beautiful green and red and yellow car. is chasing the red car of James Stevenson, and I don't think it's going to be too long before he makes a move on him. But getting back to the Dan Rash story, we should say that Dan Rash has been known in the past to give a serve, shall we say, to some of these ST drivers if they try and hold him up. So let's hope he doesn't do that today, Joe.
And there's been an incident in GS. Alexis Molina was running 6th, crashed at the carousel last lap, but decides to stay out on track. I do not think that was a smart idea. That car is not handling, and it is off in the gravel. Is Alexis going to try and coast it around the course one more time, or is he going to call for a tow? Right now he's trying to go, Joe, but that car is not good.
Joe, big battle between Yao Freitas and James Stevenson. Yao Freitas has actually got past James Stevenson as they go down towards turn 1. James Stevenson did fight back, tried to cross over, did not work, and now we have Yao Freitas in 2nd place, would you believe, from dead last.
Wow, this will be one to go down in history of the CES. Yes, if he manages to keep it together all the way to the end, even a 2nd place is pretty impressive. So let's see, actually, what's the timing like between himself and Dexter Castro? It looks like there's about 5 seconds between those guys right now, which would be roughly about what it was when he started on the grid, but he would have lost time behind other cars. So that means that he's actually probably got better pace than Dexter, if I'm thinking right, Richard.
And
Absolutely.
Another spin.
Yeah,
Another spin.
Go ahead.
Another spin in GS. Steve Brown coming out of a corkscrew. He was running in 7th place at the time. Go ahead, Richard.
Yes, I was going to say that he is visibly catching Dexter Castro. Dexter Castro also loves this track, as we know. So, and Yao Freitas obviously likes this track. Just going through the corkscrew there, absolutely just drifting it through there, Joe. So, I think we're going to see a battle between these two. And I should mention that we know from past experience that Dexter Castro is not the best guy in the pits. Whereas Yao Freitas from the Blondie series, Joe, we know that he's a pretty good pit specialist, shall we say.
And, I have to say that maybe Dexter's relationship is a bit of a love-hate one with Laguna Seca, because I know he mentioned on the forums of the CES that this is his worst track, so maybe he's just bluffing, who knows, but he seems to be handling it fairly well at the moment, trying to knock on wood here. But Yao Freitas definitely closing in. It looks like it was about 4 seconds this time by, so he's cutting that gap down bit by bit, Richard.
Absolutely. And James Stevenson is definitely running a very, very circumspect race, I would say. He's not forcing anything. When he was challenged by Yao Freitas, he briefly tried to do a crossover. When that did not work, he just settled in behind him. He's keeping himself in front of Marco Mogren, who's about a second or so back. So I think counter to what we said early on, Joe, he is just cruising to the end of this race and maintaining position and grabbing some points.
Meanwhile, I'm checking back on the GS class, Sam, and I see that Eric Smith had some trouble somewhere along the way because he is well down the field. In fact, I saw him in dead last at one point. He's trying to hunt down Reino Tani. I'm wondering if he could pull a Freitas here and work his way back up.
Yeah, if you recall, he was spun by Patrick Beery heading into the final turn. Now, on the other end of that story, Patrick Beery, I thought his car was handling okay. A little while ago, he had Steve Brown all over the back of him, so I think Patrick will need to try and pit early, try and get that damage repaired, but obviously he doesn't have Steve Brown now, because Steve Brown has also spun, and I've been seeing ST cars off as the GS leaders have came up to try and lap him. So far the GS leaders have been able to get through lap traffic, but then again, we're only 15 minutes in. There's a long race to go from this point, Joe.
Yep, yeah, we've got German Afanado, sorry, Joe. Got German Afanado coming through the corkscrew right now with 2 of the ST class. He manages to pass Philip Carpenter without any dramas. He's coming up on Ed Varese right now, and he should pass him before they go into the turn. He does. Ed Varese doesn't offer any... Ed Varese offers some resistance, would you believe? Look at that. Going into that final corner there. Ed Varese was almost side by side with Russell Clayson. Not a good idea, Ed.
I think it was actually Russell Clayson got pretty loose coming out of that corner, so he barely saved the car. I don't think it was anything of Ed trying to make up position. Philip Carpenter definitely was trying to make up position, but couldn't take advantage of it through that final corner. He's holding on back to the holding on tight to the back end of Ed right now, and this is for the 9th and 8th position, so a bit far down. Ed doesn't seem to be making good progress on this track like he has on other ones, but if he can hold it together and get a clean race, he can still possibly get in a decent points haul.
And
I want to make, before you go ahead, Samuel, I just want to make a point. I've been looking close up at Russell Clayson's car, and because of the dull weather here at the moment, you can actually, if you look carefully, you can see the front brakes absolutely glowing red. A fantastic thing to see. So just viewers, if you need to have a look, just watch on one of the TV cameras and you'll see how hot these brake pads are getting, so that they glow brightly.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say Alexis Molina came back out on the track after spinning at the carousel a couple of laps ago, but pulled into the pits, came back out, and the car looked worse. I think he has pulled it out of a race, or at least has pulled it in for extensive repairs. By the way, Dan Rash just got held up by William Randleman when he went to lap him, and that made Chemo reel in Dan a little bit more, but I think this is all temporary. I think it's all just for show. I truly believe, Joe, that Dan is faster today.
Yeah, I was watching that. He got very close to the back end of Williams, so this is the sort of driving that we're talking about. That Dan just kind of pulls right up there, and he's not afraid to make an aggressive move, as we see him coming up on Matthew Reinhold as well now, and this could hold him up. Also, it looks like he's going to be able to get around, but the question is Chemo going to be able to clear that MX-5 before the next corner? He's going to make a dive. He's kind of right in the middle of it. They're too wide through the corner, and this is definitely going to slow down Chemo, as he's going to have to wait until before turn 6 now, and he finally clears Matthew Reinhold. But wow, the damage was done. Like we said, Sam, give and take around here.
Yeah, and Chemo's got the take, I think, Joe, because if Chemo ever has the opportunity to get in front of Dan Rash, I think he's got to take it. Had he been able to clear Matthew Reinhold, he could have attempted perhaps a pass on Dan Rash for the lead. Turn 5 is certainly a possible overtaking opportunity. I think that's what he's got to do, because Dan outright I think is faster, but if Chemo has the track position, that could help him win the race.
Well, let's see what it's like trying to run down the leader around here in these top flight Mustangs. Let's hop on board with Chemo Suominen and see what it's like trying to chase down Dan Rash. So as we jump into his car, coming down the front straightaway, you can see what the distance is like. Even with what looks like not much between them from far away, you still got a fair gap when you're inside the car, Dan putting just a little bit of a wheel off. So, I mean, Sam, it's definitely an interesting ride around here in these things. And if you were Chemo, you're thinking advent or opportunistic. So I'm guessing you're taking a hard charger approach if you were Chemo.
Yeah, I think it's got to. And there could be a potential opportunity here. The lap car of Jared Lawson in the ST field. Dan Rash, if he can get by Jared on turn 5, it will be a good lap for him, and he can. And Chemo's probably going to have to wait to the hill going up from turn 6 to the corkscrew. But we'll see if that, looks like Chemo's going to get stuck behind Jared here, so that's going to extend Dan's lead, and he's safely back out in front again, Joe.
Yeah, and that's such a momentum corner that really messes you up through there, and you can see the distance lost. That white and blue Mustang of Dan Rash is just a little bit smaller of a spec now, although they close up under braking for the corkscrew. But that really hurts when you caught behind a car at a fast portion of the track. Even though they're similar in cornering speeds, because of the weight of the Mustang, you really just got to keep the momentum going, and him having to brake early just absolutely ruined that. But that's a lap around here with Chemo behind the wheel. It gives you a good idea of what it's like inside these cars and just how squirrely they can be at some portions. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Sam.
I just want to give you an update on the driver you were keeping an eye on, Joe. Eric Smith just made it back up into 7th place. He passed Jonathan Auger.
So slowly but surely trying to work his way up. And I'm getting word that actually Freitas is getting very close to Castro. What's going on over there, Richard?
Absolutely, he's been cutting that lead back that Castro had on him slowly but surely. The lap previous, he was actually right on the back of Dexter Castro as they come up now to a lapped car.
Oh, Dexter's
that
off.
would be Tom
Dexter's
Eckline,
off.
and Tom Eckline goes off track.
No, that was Dexter. Dexter is off track, Richard. So the lead has now been inherited by João Freitas, coming from last place to first in only 13 laps.
Unbelievable. I was so certain it was Tom Eckline moving out the way. I didn't even look at the paint scheme. So absolutely correct. Dexter Castro, where is he now? Did he get going again? Yes, he is back on track. Marco Mogren has passed him now. So he's got his work cut out now to even maintain third position. That was very unfortunate. Did we see exactly what happened there? Because I did not.
No, I'd have to go back and check to see what exactly sent him off. It looked like mostly driver error. Yeah, he is completely by himself from what I'm looking on the replay. So Dexter Castro completely committed that himself. It looks like he put a wheel off in 6, that dreaded corner that we keep mentioning, and that was it for him. Thankfully, he kept it out of the wall. But as they're going by the line now, he's all the way down into 4th place, so he lost more than just the lead. He's even off the podium.
Yes, but he is fast. He should be faster than Marco Mogren. I was looking at the times when Yao was chasing him. Dexter did a 141.1 or 140.1, and João Freitas only did a 140.3. So he's still got speed. It was just unfortunate that he had that little off there, which has damaged his chances. But he's off again there, Joe. He's really pushing too hard there. And I think that's a feature of his racing. When he finds himself in trouble, he pushes perhaps a little too hard, as he's virtually off once again. So he's trying to get that second place back. Just wait, Dexter. It will come to you. Don't go after it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's something that happens to a lot of drivers, I think. When you make a mistake, the red mist comes down and you tend to overdrive. And the potent mix is actually coming into it right now because
Meanwhile, Dan Ress, sorry to cut in, Dan Ress is entering the mix as well down the corkscrew. We have Dexter trying to overtake Marco Mogren and Dan Ress breathing down both of their necks. So this is going to be interesting.
And Mogren's
off. And Rash goes by, but Mogren is spinning. Will Kimo go by? He does. Those guys got a lucky break there, Joe.
Yeah, very lucky. And although I'm sure Mogren's probably not very happy with Dexter because trying to make a pass through the carousel is really not advisable. That was kind of a lunge onto the inside, and he's lucky that Marco just kind of moved out of the way so that he didn't take both of them out. But that's going to be some work for Marco to do, as we now see Dan Rash finally get by Dexter Castro, with Kimo Suominen still have to try to get by that lapped MX-5. So once again, traffic playing a role here.
Yeah,
yep, you spoke about... Go ahead, Samuel.
The carousel has really been the turn of the day. Matthew Rhino currently in the pits for damage. He spun off of the carousel. It seems half of the incidents in this race, Richard, are taking place there.
Yep, and Dexter was off track once again, going into 3 or coming out of 3. So he's not having a great time at the moment. And you know what it is? You're speaking of the red mist. It is quite intimidating to see these Mustangs come up on you on such a tight track. What do? Do you keep to the inside? Do you try and stay outside to give them room? What are they going to do? It's very difficult, Joe, as you would appreciate. And that's what happened to Marco Mogren there. He was just didn't know what to do, I think, and just lost it completely.
And you have to give credit to Marco because he was very aware after the spin happened and spun it off the track instead of trying to recover back on the track and be in the way of traffic, especially the GS leaders. So got to give him a lot of credit for racing fair and try to keep things from getting a little too messy. But I'm looking at the ST leaders once again, and I see this time by, there's about 6 seconds. There was 8 seconds before, so I guess maybe traffic was getting in the way of those between Freitas and Stevenson. But, I'm sorry, it's more than that. So Stevenson is continuing to lose time, so I was right. It looks like Stevenson doesn't have the pace on Freitas and is actually losing time here, Richard.
Absolutely. Freitas is showing that he has, pardon me, he really knows this track, and he's very fast here. James Stevenson, not often you see James Stevenson that far behind anybody, but we do know that this is not James' favorite track. He has said it over and over, even though he won here last season. I think he's just going to settle for a podium position if he can do it, and let what happens happens. Dexter Castro is into third place now. His car is still whole, so we can't discount him at this point in time yet. But all single file at this point as the GS cars are coming through and overtaking all the ST cars, Joe.
And we'll have to keep our eyes and ears out, because I see that we're nearly a half hour into the race, which is about the time that you're going to see pit stops start to take place. Right now, my eyes are on Eric Smith and Patrick Bieri, and that is for 6th and 7th in GS class. Talk about contrasting fortunes, Sam. I mean, Patrick's kind of on his way backwards, and Eric is on his way forwards.
Yeah, Patrick's, you can visibly see the damage on the front, and Eric Smith has been catching him down at the rate of about 0.6 of a second a lap, and he's just got to find an overtaking opportunity. I'll tell you right now that this corkscrew isn't going to be it. Really, the best overtaking opportunity is turn 1, and what he's got to be careful of, what Eric's got to be careful of, is not spinning his tyres on the exit of turn 1 and spinning his car around and losing more time. He's just got to gradually give the car a bit of gas coming out of the final turn. But even if he does it this lap, I don't think he's close enough to Patrick. But yeah, certainly this is the battle right now.
And we got some commentary from the peanut gallery here saying that Smith might want revenge, since it was Patrick who actually punted him off a little bit earlier. But I think you make a good point about the tires, as we see Eric start to go on the inside of turn 1, and it looks like Patrick is just going to let him through. So probably a smart move with his better pace. But yeah, these tires, you really have to watch out for them. That's sort of one of the key features of the Mustang, with its weight and its power. If I could describe this car, Sam, sometimes it kind of feels like driving on marshmallows with these things.
Yeah, it does. I would like to know, that's Jared Lawson, the ST car off right there. I would like to note that I don't really think that Eric would be blaming Patrick that much, because Eric really had to get out of it for, I believe it was Russell Clayson got sideways in front of him. It was more of an accordion effect, I believe, than a punt.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I don't think there was anything wrong. It was just mostly we were getting some calls from commenters asking for that, which we never like to see malicious acts on the track. We always want to see guys race hard and race fair. So let's go through the top 5, because we haven't run through that, and pit stops are going to take place, and that's really going to mess things up. In ST class, João Freitas continues to lead with James Stevenson in 2nd. Dexter Castro has worked his way back into 3rd. Marco Mogren's in 4th, and in 5th we have Jarrett Lawson. What's the top 5 in GS, Sam?
We have Dan Rash currently leading by 2.7 seconds over Kimmo Suominen. Todd Hensarenko, we haven't mentioned him a whole lot this race, but he's running out there in 3rd. German Afanador 4th and Russell Clayson 5th. But the drive I want to give a shout out to is currently Fernando Fireball running in 11th. He's a new drive of a race. True, he's not up there right yet, but he's got a clean car and he's racing the other drivers cleanly. He's keeping pace with them, currently in a battle with Reno Tani here for 10th, Joe.
Yeah, and Fernando is one of those guys we saw a couple times early on in the season, but he hasn't been able to make it back till now. So we're glad to see his face back here, and hopefully having a good fight here with Reno as he takes a little bit of a look, but nothing doing at the moment, as Reno actually goes quite wide on the entry of that corner on that first hairpin, but is able to hold on to the spot. As you mentioned, this is for 10th and 11th between these guys, so it all still counts, because the points go all the way down to the bottom, and these guys are going to want everything that they could possibly get. And, you know, you have to give credit, Sam, to some of these guys who are farther back as, whoa, Reno goes a little bit squirrely on the exit, and that's going to give Fernando a chance coming up towards 5 and cleanly gets past. So good move from Fernando. I was going to say, Sam, you have to give credit to these guys that fight for these farther back positions, because it seems like most of them are fighting just as hard, and they really have the spirit that you need to be a race car driver.
Oh, yeah, certainly. You know, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain what makes a driver slower than another driver without the spectator having stepped into a car, but everyone's trying as hard as they can, pushing as hard as they can, And that goes throughout every driver in the field. Even drivers who look like they're having nice, clean races, like Todd Tensarenko, we were mentioning in third, are pushing as hard as they can. And I know that for a fact because Todd went off at the corkscrew last lap and had a slowdown penalty and has lost touch with the two leaders.
So more troubles coming out through Laguna Seca and its difficult twists and turns. It looks like things are starting... Oh, go ahead.
Pit stops have begun. Reno Tani is our first into the pits. Do you think he can make it to the end from here, Joe?
It's going to be a bit of a tall order, although he's one of the back markers, so he should be able to do one less lap than some of the leaders. He's obviously running a bit slower of a pace, and that can come into play if you're one of those drivers, because you can short fill and maybe make up some spots by just taking it easy for a little bit. And, you know, something that could be said for that, too, is that if a caution comes into play, he can be right back into it.
Yes, certainly, and I'm kind of surprised. We're over half an hour into this race, Joe, and there hasn't been a single caution yet. There's been... Oh, and Reno Tani is out of a race. He's pulled his car into the pits. He's done, so I don't quite know what's going on there because he wasn't involved in any kind of incident, but our GS field is now down to 11 cars.
That's an unfortunate development. Reno seemed to be doing fairly decently. Maybe he got just a bit of a tap at some point along the line and just had some damage that was making it undrivable, and he saw no point in continuing. But someone who is continuing is Dan Rash, who's still leading by 3 whole seconds above Suominen. I think you're right, Sam. I think you called it in saying that Kimo doesn't quite have the pace at the moment. But, you know, pit stops aren't over yet, and we've seen Kimo pull moves later on in the race and really surprise us with just kind of taking it easy early on as we see him come up on Ed Verras and try to lap that MX-5.
Yeah, pit stops could come into play, cautions could come into play, lap traffic could come into play. Look at this, Dan Rash right behind João Freitas. Now remember what happened last year when Dan Rash caught the ST leader? There was contact. Rash still went on to win the race, but Ayrton Ellis, who was the ST driver leading at the time, didn't. And they're gonna come to blows. It's gonna happen right where it happened with Ayrton last time, coming out of his carousel. Okay, maybe not. Dan Rash a bit further back. He should be able to pass Freitas cleanly on the front stretch if he gives him enough space right here.
And we'll get an idea directly on whether or not this affected the laps of either drivers, because they're close enough that we'll be able to visibly see the times immediately here on if Kimo has caught up to him. They're coming across the start-finish line now as he cleanly gets on by João Freitas, and it looks like Kimo's gone by too as well. And it's about 3.2 seconds, so Dan actually made up time. So even though I guess Kimo had to pass some traffic as well, so not really much comparable, about maybe 0.3 lost between them. Not really a lot happening in the GS class. Everyone's getting pretty spread out. We kind of need a caution at this point to really bunch things up. Is ST any closer with anybody, Richard?
Well, no, not at this point in time, but I do want to mention João Freitas. João Freitas, this guy is on a mission. His last lap was a 1:39.4. 1:39.4. And his fastest lap was a 1:39.1. That is fast around this track, let me tell you guys. I have not seen times like that anywhere. James Stevenson, his best time was a 1:40.8. So João Freitas well and truly clobbering this field, Joe.
Well, it's almost kind of good that João Freitas had a bad qualifying and couldn't get things in, because a 1:39.4 even would have given him pole by almost a whole second over Dexter Castro. So he could have just run away with this thing if he started from the front. I think he gave us at least a little bit of excitement, so maybe it was considerate from Freitas.
Yeah, probably. But, you know, you just watch him. He went by Ed Verras as if Ed Verras was just standing still. I mean, that is a major difference between the talent of João Freitas and a lesser driver. He is clobbering this field at the moment. Having said that, let us note that stranger things have happened. Guys who have been fast have lost races, so it's early days yet. There's still the better part of an hour to go. We will see if he can maintain this pace before and even after the pit stop. So yeah, Joe, pretty strung out at the moment. I kind of agree with you that maybe we do need a caution to kind of pull things together again or close them up a little bit, because right now there's basically Dan Rash and Jan Freitas way out in front of any of the contenders.
Yes,
And we just spoke about it. He nearly spun the car right there in turn 5. He did catch it though, and going into 6, he's back on pace again. But that was very close there, Joe.
Yeah, boy, gave us a little bit of a scare there. Thankfully, he's able to continue on. Hopefully, we won't have too much more of that. We are going to hop off the break to see if anything starts to develop around here, with everything being so strung out. But we'll come back soon after a break. Hopefully, some pit stops have started and really start to shake things up. So we'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Laguna Seca. We've just come back after a bit of action happened on track. Dexter Castro got in the back of James Stevenson, so Dexter moved up into second momentarily, but then he took a pit stop and he seemed to have a bit of damage because he took quite a bit of a stop. Few drivers are out of the race, though. David Wammond is gone, Reino Tani is gone, Alexis Molina is out of the car, and Matthew Reinhold, the most recent retirement, unfortunately. João Freitas had a bit of a moment, too, at one point there, Richard.
Oh, absolutely. He was coming up to overtake Marco Mogren, I believe it was. And the two of them, Marco was trying to get out of the way, and he nearly lost it. And a couple of laps previous to that, he definitely lost it and managed to catch it up again. So, bit of action while the viewers were, while we were off on the break, actually.
And James Stevenson apparently is in for his pit stop, and he's going to lose quite a bit of time to Dexter Castro, it looks like. So Castro running away with second. I know James was not happy with him. We mentioned their history a little bit earlier, Richard, and it looks like it continues even after they've been away from each other for so long.
Yeah, well, James just coming out of the pits right now. Now, I would not be happy about that as well. They were coming into turn 5. There was no drama anywhere, and Dexter just went straight into the back of James Stevenson into the turn, and I have to say that's not good driving.
Well, meanwhile, Dan Rash and Kimmo Suominen have pitted. Todd Honzarenko has not, so he's inherited the lead, but he still needs to make his stop. He was a bit of a ways back before the pit stops, so he's going to have to make up some serious time to try and make that up. Steve Brown is actually coming into the pits as well right now. He had moved himself up to 4th, but he'll slot back down now that he's making his pit stops. So everything's starting to shake out through these guys. We're hearing word that Mogren might have made a second stop there. So apparently he might have gotten some damage somewhere along the line.
Yeah, Sorry, go ahead, Samuel.
I was going to say, I saw him coming in the pits. It didn't look like he had any damage, but he is out of a race. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he's out of the race. He did have that near touch with João Freitas, but that certainly was no damage. I just wonder whether some of the guys are thinking, it's probably not worth carrying on with this race, which is a shame because, if you enter a race, you should try and finish it, in my opinion.
No, I'm absolutely with you, Richard. You got to carry on. You got to keep pushing because you don't know what can be gained, especially in the Conti series with the cautions and everything. There's some really lucky breaks that can come about, and we've seen it with guys like Carl Williamson and even Dan Rash. Dan Rash has come back with 2 pit stops and won the thing. So it ain't over till it's over, as we like to say. And in racing, the best drivers are the ones that really just never give up.
Absolutely. I'm one of those drivers. I don't care whether I'm dead last and it's the last lap. I'm going to keep fighting, hoping that something will increase my position at least. So James Stevenson now, Joe, he's come out of the pits. Looked at his car from all angles. He doesn't seem to have any damage to the car. So that's a good thing. But I'm pretty sure he'd be steaming inside that cockpit right now because that was really uncalled for when he was probably willing to give up that position, second position to Dexter, because Dexter is obviously faster than him at this track.
Another interesting development, we're seeing that James Stevenson had an even longer stop than Dexter, which explains how we lost some of that time in the pit stops. So it might not be completely down to pace. Dexter's still holding on to second, but João Freitas has not pitted yet, I believe. So that explains his huge gap back to him. And we're kind of waiting to see how that plays out. And we don't exactly know, even though João is pretty good in pit stops and blondies, it's a little bit of a different beast in the Continental series. So I'm wondering, as we see him get kind of loose coming through that final corner there, if he kind of knows how this game is played here.
Well, I think with the Conti series, it's pretty straightforward, Joe. You run, if it's green flag racing, you run as far as you can on the fuel that you've got. You go in, you change 4 tires, and you change your fuel, and you come back out again. So maybe that's the straightforward strategy that Joe's using here today.
Well, his forward strategy seems to be run as fast as you can because he's running a 39.6. I mean, he's essentially doing qualifying pace around here compared to the other guys. You kind of have to wonder what could have been if he did hit a qualifying lap, how much ahead of everybody else he would have been. I mean, some of that comes into play with the warming up of the tires on this tire model, but even still, these are impressive laps from this guy. He is just smoking everybody.
Well, and Dexter Castro, I must say, let's give some kudos where it's due. Dexter Castro's fastest time was a 1:39.8, so that's not slow either. His last time was 1:41, so he's a lot slower now than his fastest times. Let me see what James Stevens has done. James Stevens is still on 1:41, so he's still slower, so it doesn't look like he's going to catch Dexter, but we have seen stranger things. 28 laps have been completed. How much time? About 37 minutes remaining, Joe, so still a lot can happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even 2/3 through the race. And wow, to tell you how much of a pit stop counts for in green flag racing, James Stevenson in third is about to be lapped by João Freitas. So even though James was a fair ways back before the pit stops, it loses you a lot. So if you time it wrong, the cautions could make you incredibly unlucky as we see Freitas come upon what looks like Philip Carpenter and get by him.
Yes, and quite so. I mean, take away the fact that João Freitas definitely is the fastest in this car here today. To overtake and lap James Stevenson, that is one for the record for sure.
Yeah, well, we've talked about ST for a little bit. What are things like on the Mustang side, Sam?
Well, our last pit stopper just came down pit road. That's Fernando Fireball, and that completes GS pit stops. Top three have remained the same. Dan Rash with 2.7 seconds over Kimmo Suominen. Todd Hensarenko about 10 seconds behind them. Really, the biggest development during the GS pit stops was that Jeff Jacobs came in twice, and he is now sitting last in the GS class, Joe.
Well, I was watching Todd Hensarenko. He had quite a moment coming through sixth, but was able to keep it on the track. He's kind of all by himself. He's been running a bit of a quiet race, 12 seconds back from Rash. So he's just kind of taking his quiet podium for now, it seems. I mean, he has a long ways back to German Fanador. You have to give him some credit in all this. Kimmo's still just kind of holding on and 2.6, so he's a little bit closer than we saw earlier when it was 3 seconds back. It seems like maybe it's fluctuating with this traffic, Sam.
Yeah, I think what did Todd in was one, probably a bit of a longer pit stop, and two, he also had that slowdown penalty a couple of laps before that stop. Really, he's going to need a caution to get back up there, and we know he's got the pace. So, if a caution, as they say, changes everything.
I think João Freitas has just gone into the pits, guys. So, yes, he is in the pits at this point in time. So, let's see what happens. I mean, he's got a big enough lead that he should still come out in first place. I'm not sure that he even took any tires. That's a really quick pit stop, Joe.
Yeah, and I was checking back to see where Dexter Castro was, and he was actually going off track coming up into 5. So, wow, with João already out, I mean, Dexter's just going into the corkscrew now. That is an incredible gap between those guys. So, João, I mean, it's all over bar the shouting, as you like to say, Richard. He's just, with his pit stop done, unless he borked the fuel, he could just run home with this one. In fact, he could probably stop in, take some fuel, and still run away with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go, while you guys talk about some other events that are taking place, I'm going to go back and have a look and see what he did during his pit stop. So bear with me for a while.
All right, well, since it looks like pit stops are starting to be completed, I mean, we've got 37 minutes left on the clock. Everyone should pretty much have theirs done. João Freitas is leading the ST class. Dexter Castro holds on to second. James Stevenson still in third. Jarrett Lawson worked himself up to a very respectable fourth. And William Randleman is completing the top 5. What's the top 5 in GS looking like, Sam?
Well, Dan Rash has currently extended his lead over Kimmo Suominen to 3.2 seconds. Todd Hensarenko having a quiet race still in third. German Fanador in fourth, and we've got this battle for fifth, Joe, between Russell Clayson and Eric Smith. However, it's been like this for a few laps. Eric doesn't seem like he wants to make a move on Russell. He seems that he's quite happy riding behind him for now. I don't know if he's saving gas, saving his tires, or just waiting for a caution to come out. But then also he might not want to go in front of Russell, because during our break we saw Russell make some aggressive moves. He went 3 wide in between the pair of Miatas going into turn 6.
Yeah, which definitely is not advisable. And Eric got a little squirrely on the exit of the final corner, so he lost some time. And I've seen him bleaking just a bit too, so his connection doesn't seem to be perfect. But, you know, I almost wonder if it's none of the above, and maybe he's just given some space to Russell and waiting for a mistake so that he can get on cleanly by. You don't always want to run super close behind another car because, like we said, these are a bit of momentum cars. So I wonder if maybe he's just leaving a little bit of gap and waiting for his opportunity to come.
Yeah, meanwhile, and we talk about opportunistic moves. James Brown just spun off out the corkscrew, so it can happen to anyone. James Brown didn't lose any positions, though. One driver in GS who has lost a lot of positions is Patrick Beery, who had that nose damage from when we saw that incident in the I'm sorry, I was watching something there. In the final turn earlier, Patrick Beery must have taken some extra time on that stop to fix his front end, because he's lost a lot of time, currently down 9th in the GS class. Meanwhile, there is about a 5-car pack with Eric Smith in 6th place going off. Look at this, going through the corkscrew. Ed Verras, Jared Lawson, João Freitas, all in front of Russell Clayson. Is he going to go 3 wide again between 2 Miatas?
And Freitas actually has to go off the track.
Freitas stays wide, virtually into the pits there. Gets it back on track. He'll have a few 1Xs in iRacing terms from that excursion, but at least he's still safe. And I can tell you folks that he did not take any tires, fuel only. So I wonder how this is going to play out towards the end. There's still the best part of 30 minutes to go, Joe. This is going to be quite interesting. Quite honestly, I don't think anybody else can match him today. But they certainly should be catching him, as you can almost see the tire wear taking place as he's pushing still very, very hard. But he hasn't got the grip that he had previously by the looks of it.
I kind of wonder about some of these moves that we're seeing Russell Clayson make in traffic. He's being extremely aggressive, and sometimes you have to be in the Mustangs, but I don't know about going 3 wide through turn 10. I mean, it's hard enough going through there 2 wide. I don't know. I hate passing judgment on drivers, but I feel like Russell is just kind of pushing a little too far in some places today.
Yeah, I hear you, Joe, and I have to agree with you. His contention would probably be that they are the slower car, they should give way. But, you know, you want to drive with care, because all that's going to happen if he's not careful is that he and a bunch of ST drivers land up in the pits.
And right in front of him, Jeff Jacobs has been going on and off the track over the past couple of laps. I don't know if he has some damage, because like I said, he had 2 stops earlier, but he's going to stick to right here and allow them to go by. Eric Smith not able to make a move on Russell Clayson this time round because he made a mistake a couple of times ago. Let's remember, Eric got spun early in the race. He's still trying to come back from that, Joe.
Yes, but 6th is nothing to sneeze at, because he lost a lot of spots in that. So he's worked his way back up fairly well. Like I said, I recall at one point he was all the way in last. So he's made progress. I'm kind of just waiting to see what he does with Russell. I'm starting to think more and more that he's being circumspect, like you said, and also just holding the gap, like I said, that it's kind of a mix of the two, and he's kind of waiting for the right time. He doesn't want to really fight too hard with Russell, and I wouldn't be either after seeing him try a move like that through turn 10 earlier.
You know what, Joe? Dare I say it? I will say it. You'd rather have Russell in front of you than behind you, put it that way.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. As Eric just misses the apex through turn 6, that'll cost him a bit of time, so he's got to try to make that up. We have 30 minutes left on the clock, so Russell goes
very
off.
wide. He's lost it completely. Eric Smith gets the position now. He can take the position without too much drama. Russell comes back on track again, but he's lost a whole heap of time to Eric right there.
And that's the intelligent driving that I keep talking about, Sam. It's you got to wait for the right time, wait for a mistake or some sort of opening rather than just pushing your nose right in there.
Yeah, and now Eric Smith is behind German Afanador in a battle for 4th place. Well, I say a battle at 16 seconds, so it looks like, barring any caution, 5th is as high as Eric can go. But we'll have to see what Russell Clayson's mindset is now. Does he want that position back? Is he going to push his car extra hard to try and get 5th back, or is he going to take this 6th? Because right now, he's kind of in safe ground, because Steve Brown is another 19 seconds back from him.
Well, I mean, to try and challenge for that place, he has to get back up there. And you mentioned before that Eric closed in on Russell, so unless Eric has shot his tires, then I'm not sure that Russell could maybe run him back up unless things have changed there. So good top 5 finish for Eric, possibly. German could still make a mistake as well, so it's not completely out of the question. Todd Honzarenko, though, is a whole nother one. I don't know if he's going to be able to manage a podium unless, like you said, and I'm sorry, commentator's curse, because Todd Honzarenko has just spun out of the final corner. He brings it back around without touching anything. He's far enough ahead that he really didn't lose a whole lot to German Afanador, but Todd Honzarenko's got to bring this thing to the finish before he can hold on to that podium spot.
Yeah, there's only one battle really in GS right now, and it's livening up. Down the inside of Jonathan Auger looks Patrick Beery for 8th position, and Patrick takes the spot as Jonathan puts a bit of dust up in the air. But yeah, really, besides that, the field is so spread out that any mistake, unless you put it in the wall, really isn't costing these drivers a whole lot.
Boy, we keep talking about aggressive moves. That was an aggressive move from Patrick, and Jonathan Auger pretty much was scared off the track with that thing. But everyone held it together. It was only 2 wheels off for Jonathan, so he continues on in 9th position there. So at least he'll grab a top 10 if he can hold on to it. The minutes are still...
Castro's off.
Go ahead.
Turn 6, I believe that is. Dexter Castro spun it, and once again, like we said, he's so far in front of James Stevenson that there's no change in position. Although he's still getting up to speed, Stevenson only going to be a couple of seconds behind him by the time he gets going again.
Boy, if there was a place that you don't want to...
Interesting.
If there was a place you don't want to stop, Richard, I would have to say it's that uphill, because these cars aren't very powerful, these MX-5s. And James, you just saw the ground that he made up with Dexter having to go from a standstill.
Absolutely. So, and Dexter goes wide again, very wide, coming out of turn number 10 there. And he's lost some more time to James Stevenson. Now I believe James Stevenson might have a sniff and start attacking. I was just looking at the time differences between João Freitas and Dexter. It was something like 36 seconds that he's got a lead on it. He is still going, dare I say, like a bat out of hell. There's no reason for him to be doing that. He's got a big lead, but I guess João is just trying to prove a point here. But let's hope that this battle develops a little bit more between 2nd and 3rd place here, i.e. Dexter Castro and James Stevenson, because I'm sure that James Stevenson would love to beat Dexter here after what happened earlier in the race.
Wouldn't you imagine that? And we see some more puffs of dirt as Dexter continues to put a few wheels off here and there. And, you know, we talk about this a lot. Dexter's not exactly known for being the cleanest of drivers when it comes to these 1Xs, these off tracks. So, I mean, I'm not too shocked to see him really push the car beyond the limits of the track boundaries.
No, not at all. I mean, this is hosted racing. There are no penalties whatsoever for putting wheels off track, although you don't win the Mr. Clean award by doing that. But by contrast, James Stevenson is a very, very clean driver. He prides himself on getting the least amount of incidents in a race. So, and yet he's still very fast, and he's not making up much time on Dexter at this point in time. So I just hope that he can catch so we can see a little battle happening.
And I will make one addendum on the off tracks in this series. They do count for points, actually, because if you have enough, you can lose points actually get bonus points if you have few enough. So you do want to pay attention to those. It has come into play with some drivers in the past in the championship with, like you said, guys like... Oh, go ahead.
Rash just made it 3 wide into turn 5, Joe. I'm sorry, but he hit a lot of traffic at one time, was able to get through it cleanly. I'm sure he's not in a rush. He currently has over 4 seconds over Chemo, but still, anything could happen in this race. If that traffic hadn't gave Dan room, we could be talking about a new leader right now.
Yeah, and I mean, 4 seconds isn't insurmountable. If he keeps running into traffic like that, that's something that Chemo can get right up on him, and with it being the end of the race, that's the point at which Chemo is going to want to start to make those more aggressive moves and try to take the win away from Dan. As it stands right now, he's got a bit of traffic to get through as he gets by Matthew Reinhold and works himself through these MX-5s. But it's a fair... Actually, it looks like well more than 4 seconds from what I'm looking at on the track, so we'll have to watch this time by at the line to see where it is, guys.
Well, guys, there's absolutely no battles happening at the moment in ST, and I suspect even in GS as well. I think the closest gap is Dan Rass and Kimmo Suominen.
And it looks like it's still holding at about 4 seconds, Sam, so no time gain, no time lost between them. But Chemo still has some more guys to go through with William Randleman ahead of him.
Yeah, well, as soon as Dan Rash and Chemo came out of the pits, there were about 2 seconds between them. I almost wonder if before the pit stops, when Chemo was less than 2 seconds behind Dan, as Dan gets a little bit squirrely up turn 4 there, that he was getting Dan's draft. Now that Dan's been able to break that draft by, I guess, getting a faster pit stop than Chemo, I don't know that for a fact, he's been able to pull away from Chemo, and Chemo right now can do nothing about it, but hope that something happens.
Yeah, we definitely need development here, possibly a caution or something. We've got 24 minutes left in the race, so there's a decent chunk to go, and not really much of anybody battling with each other, so... we need one of these guys out on the track to start give us some action here.
Well, you know, I've been watching some of these GS cars, in particular Todd Honsarenko, and these cars, you know, this is a track with a lot of turns, and they're tight turns. The tires, I wish Kevin were here, he'd be able to give us some more information. But I tell you what, these tires on these GS cars, these Mustangs, they must be right at the end of their grip limit, because these guys are almost as if they're floating around corners. They're not actually doing it with any grip at all.
I was watching João Freitas for a bit while you were talking. Coming around turn 2, the Andretti hairpin, he almost spun it out once again, so he is still pushing this car, even with this huge gap that he's got. I mean, we've seen this from him almost all race, that he's just really wrangling the hell out of it, and I'm just not sure why he's pushing so hard. It's almost like he doesn't just want to win, he wants to embarrass everyone.
Well, Joe, I can tell you that he just did a 1:39.058. That was his fastest lap of the race so far.
That is absolutely incredible. I mean, the weather plays some into this, but that is still a stonking fast lap from this guy. I'd like to see Freitas drive in this series more often. I feel like he could possibly give a challenge to James Stevenson.
Absolutely, and not only that, remember he did not take any tires whatsoever when he went into the pits. So to do a 1:39 flat, basically, that's incredible.
You know, it could be the best battle on the track within a couple of laps, guys. João Freitas is actually catching Jeff Jacobs, and that will be a battle for 12th position.
12th position overall? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. It would be a battle for 12th position overall. Jeff Jacobs, the last GS car left in the race, and João Freitas, the fastest ST car in the race.
Yeah, well, there's about, let me see, 46 to 53, about 7 seconds between them. And João Freitas is doing better lap times than Jeff Jacobs, pretty much.
Well, that's certainly going to be an interesting one if we actually get to see that. And I have to agree, that'd probably be the best battle we can watch on the track, because Jeff is going to be able to pull away on every straightaway unless he actually decides to give way. And that's impressive stuff from João to be able to run him down. We've got 21 minutes left on the clock, and since a whole lot is going on, why don't we take a break soon here? Before we go, we'll give you the top 5 in each class real quick. Once again, Dan Rash leads GS and overall. Kimmo Suominen is holding down second. Todd Honzarenko in third. German Afenador in fourth, and Eric Smith in fifth. What about ST, Richard?
João Freitas is leading the ST class. He has got nearly a minute now on Dexter Castro in second place. James Stevenson in third. William Randleman is he's moved his way up into fourth place, and Jared Lawson brings up the fifth place, Joe.
All right, we are going to take a short break, and we'll be back for the finish. We'll see you on the other side of the commercials. Welcome back to Laguna Seca for the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series Round 10. We're getting to the closing stages of this race, and João Freitas is absolutely dominating everybody in the ST class, while we have Dan Rash having a healthy lead of 7 seconds over Kimmo Suominen in the GS class, looking to add to his tally of wins. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of cars that are by each other, so when we say things have settled down, Richard, things really have settled down.
Make no mistake. I mean, João Freitas is leading this race by 1 minute and 3 seconds over Dexter Castro. James Stevenson is 3 seconds back from Dexter Castro. So there may be some sort of a battle happening over the next 10 minutes, but I wouldn't like to bet on it.
I think, if anything, it's wishful thinking from us at this point, because I know all of us in the booth are looking forward to round 2 between Dexter and James, but it looks like James just doesn't have the pace today. And we were talking a bit about this earlier, that this doesn't seem to be James's track, or maybe he's just kind of letting everybody else have a bit of the limelight.
You know, it is not his favorite track. We know that. He's admitted that in the chat. But it does look like if Dexter Castro puts a foot wrong, or a wheel wrong in this case, James will have him, because James is only just 3 seconds back now, so he's catching him. There's no doubt about that. That's an interesting thing to look forward to, because I would love to see these two battle it out for that second place.
Yeah, and I would too. We've got about 11 minutes left to go on the clock. There's still time for a caution, possibly to throw a loop into things, and boy would it, with it being so close to the end. And we don't wish drivers ill, but you know, at this point we're hoping for a little bit of excitement, and we're hoping something happens.
He's catching him, guys. Definitely, there is. James Stevenson is catching Dexter Castro. There's no question now in my mind. The gap now by the line was, let me see, still just under 4 seconds, but visibly it seems like he's catching him. There's no doubt.
Yeah, he does look closer on the track from what I'm looking at, so it seems like he's slowly reeling him in. Maybe he was just taking it easy until now, and it looks like we're getting word that Dexter actually went off a bit, so that's definitely been helping. We've been watching, and Dexter's definitely abusing the boundaries of the track, so to speak. So it's kind of back and forth. It's a battle, but it's not a battle. It's a bit of a weird one, Sam.
Yeah, meanwhile, GS is a much similar picture. 7.6 seconds separate the two leaders. The closest battle on track would be for 9th place. 3.7 seconds between Jonathan Orga and Fernando Fireball. Fernando had taken a second off of Jonathan last lap for that 9th place, but then made a mistake in the corkscrew, Joe.
Boy, Dan Rash had a bit of a moment, because he was trying to get by Steve Brown lapping that Mustang, and almost lost it coming out of turn 3. So at least he was able to hold on to it, although that could have turned sour very easily. And once again, the changing fortunes of different drivers. Steve Brown used to be fighting up for podiums and for wins, currently in 7th. I can't remember exactly what happened, if he ran into some trouble, but he's definitely, I mean, being lapped is not what we're used to from him.
No, but Dan Rash has put on an impressive pace today, Joe. Like I was saying before we went to break, ever since his pit stop, he was able to break a slipstream, the Kimmo, in my opinion. That is what has helped contribute him to having a 7-second lead. And really, he's built up a lot of that 7 seconds within half a race. Had he been able to pull out away from Kimmo at the start, he could have a 14-second lead right now. And remember, it was a 40-second lead he won over Eric Smith last season. Well, Eric Smith is currently a minute back of Dan, but then again, let's not forget that that's because he was spun at the start of a race.
Which would cost you roughly 10 to 12 seconds usually, so it's still a significant chunk more than what he had, although some of that could be attributed to Eric trying to come back through the field. It's all kind of touch and go. You can't always tell. But we've got 8 minutes left now from what I'm looking at. And
come on, guys, let's get back to the battle between James Stevenson and Dexter Castro. Have a look at the gap now, guys.
Yeah, I was just looking that as you spoke, and he's definitely closed in here, Richard.
Well, he's now, I would say it's a matter of car lengths now, not seconds anymore. He's visibly closing that gap just as we speak. And as they go down onto out of turn number 11, the last turn, he's right on his bumper. So now we have some action to talk about, guys. We have James Stevenson right behind him. Is he going to attempt to make the pass into one? Let's see what happens. He's in the draft now. Dexter Castro goes to the inside, make sure that he's got that line covered. James goes to the outside, passes him. Now, what's going to happen into one? James stays wide. Dexter takes the inside line. James gives it to him because he's probably got less than fond memories of what happened previously. But now the battle is on. So let us keep an eye on this one because definitely, or seems like he's blinking in and out there, Joe.
Yeah, he had a bit of a connection problem for a second there. But I was actually thinking about that as he got another run coming towards 5 here. Is he going to take a look? Yeah, he's going to take a peek on the inside. Is he going to make an aggressive move? This is where the contact was made last time. He does not, but Dexter makes a mistake.
Right there. You know, that's exactly what happened previously. Dexter Castro overcooks it going into the corner, and James Stevenson actually went for him and then braked. And Dexter responded as we, well, we didn't hope that he would, but certainly he responded in the wrong way and overcooked it into the corner and lost it completely, and he's lost the position.
I guess contents under pressure is not a good thing for Dexter, and I have to imagine that's some sweet feeling justice for James Stevenson to see him lose it and take the position back in the very corner where he was punted off.
Yes, that's right. And I'm sure he would have been saying in the Australian vernacular, "You beauty."
Absolutely. And we've got, what, about 2 or 3 laps to go left here with how many minutes are left on the clock? We've got 6 minutes left on the clock, so it's definitely down to the end, and Dexter Castro has got a lot of ground to make up, and with James reeling him in, I don't think Dexter's going to be able to do it, but he at least has that third place pretty much locked up, so still a podium finish for Dexter today.
Absolutely. I mean, Dexter did not run a bad race here, and a great race, I would say, but he did cause that little accident with James Stevenson, and you know, I'm sure that James Stevenson must be feeling, what is the word, he must be feeling good about the fact that he's got that position back over Dexter now.
I hear there's actually a battle going on in GS. What's the word, Sam?
It came and it went. Fernando Fireball ran Jonathan Auger down. Jonathan just gave him the position in the final turn, so changed for position in the GS field. Meanwhile, I want to give my 2 cents on this Dexter-James scenario. To me, it was very weird how James was about 2 or 3 seconds behind Dexter for about 10 laps, and then in 1 lap ran down 3 seconds on him. And I almost wondered if Dexter was saving fuel, but if he did have some fuel issues, he would have... why not come in? Because the next car behind him is William Randleman. It's about a whole lap behind him.
Yeah, in fact, I was looking at the gap between Dexter and João Freitas, and Freitas almost has an entire lap on Dexter, so Freitas is getting ready to lap the entire field as it is if he had a few more minutes.
Yeah, that's right, guys. Freitas has just completely demolished everybody. Dominated is the word that you used before, and I think that is the correct word. I was watching.
Oh, I'm sorry. Freitas is off. Freitas is off, and that is coming out of the carousel into 10. He didn't hit anything from what I can see, but he was completely well around. Yeah, I'm looking back at the replay now, and he just goes a bit wide out of the carousel, and I've seen that bite plenty of people. Spins it around, keeps it out of the barriers, and then gets it back going again. But he's got such a gap, it's almost inconsequential at this point.
Absolutely.
He's been sliding around a lot the last few laps, Joe, and I guess it finally got the better of him. But why not slow down, Joe? You know, you've got a, what? Something's telling me, 72-second lead. So, you know, even if he was about 30 seconds slower a lap than James, he could still win this race, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, bear in mind he didn't take any tires, and the tires must be pretty second-hand by now. They're probably down to the canvas. But he hasn't slowed down. He's still pushing very, very hard. That lap obviously was a bad lap for him, a 1 minute 49. But look at him. I mean, the attitude is, I am going to race this thing right down to the wire, guys, and catch me if you can, which they won't, unfortunately for them.
Well, I was checking up on that battle between Zhao and Jeff Jacobs, and unfortunately because of that off, he lost some time, although Jeff Jacobs also had an off in turn 6, but he kept it out of the wall. I'm hearing word that there's a battle between Randleman and Lawson, though.
4th place in the ST class, Richard.
Yes, sir. And we have Jared Lawson now behind. They're going into turn 1 as we speak. Jared Lawson is trailing William Randleman by a few car lengths. So as we get to the end of this race, Joe, we might actually have a little bit of action. How remarkable is that?
You know what's even more remarkable, we mentioned this over the break, the fact that this track of all tracks is the one that's giving us one without action. I mean, there's still there's a lot of mistakes, but everything's so strung out. We're used to just things being a little bit more crazy around here.
Yep, and they're going to 5 now. They're approaching 6. Closing up is Jared Lawson on William Randleman. William goes through 6. Jared Lawson goes through 6, all nice and safe. Now, let's see, they come to the corkscrew, which has undone many a driver, so let's see what happens here. William Randleman still has it pretty much under control. Beautiful through there. Jared Lawson just as good through there, so the battle continues, but no result at this point. In fact, William Randleman has extended his lead a little bit.
And I saw Russell Clayson was behind them, and he really wasn't trying to get through there too hard, which is a change from what we saw earlier in the race. Maybe with no one around him to try and run down, he's just taking his time and not trying to risk getting through these guys as he closes up to the back.
Joe, Lawson has closed up on Randleman very much, and there's a GS car coming up behind them as well. And we have James Stevenson coming up behind the two of them as well. So, and there we go. Lawson makes a move into 1. Randleman has to go wide on the outside, and he's going to lose the position because you don't want to be caught out wide there. You just do not have enough to keep in touch with the guy in front of you. So now Randleman's got it all to do to try and catch Lawson now. Lawson has made up that position. Good on you, Jared.
Yeah, that was a very clean move. We're trying to figure out if we've got the white flag. Sometimes it's a little confusing with how iRacing plays it out. We see less than a minute to go. So it is, in fact,
in the air, and Dan Rash is coming through turn 4 right now, so he's got about 6 or 7 turns to go, Joe.
So Kimmo Suominen has about a 5.6 second gap up to the leader. So I don't think he's going to get it unless Dan Rash makes a mistake as he drifts it through turn 5 right now up towards that tricky turn 6. Just a little bit to go to add to his tally and hopefully try and make some inroads, but I don't think this is going to be enough. I think Kimmo, all he has to do is hold this position and he can hold on to the championship and seal the deal. Rash comes up to the corkscrew, takes it through cleanly, and you have to say, Sam, that this was just an immaculate race from Rash.
Yeah, and I was the one who thought he wouldn't do it. Kimmo, in my opinion, has really shown Dan that he's been faster, more consistent, less aggressive, more rewarding driver. And today, Dan just owned this track.
Oh, man! This guy is giving me a heart attack. João Freitas nearly lost it coming out of
sorry
sixth
to interrupt, Richard, but we're actually getting the checkered flag for Dan Rash as he comes across the line and takes the win for the GS class and the 10th race of the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series. I'm sorry, go ahead, Richard.
Now we have João Freitas coming to the final turns now. He's coming through 10, heading down towards the final turn 11. But he had my heart, right in my mouth just then. He's just pushing it so hard when it is totally unnecessary. But he will take the win. He's about to cross the line as we speak. He's weaving his car. He now crashes the car head over tail over the line and wins the race.
Bringing some Blondie style to the CESCS race. Just to tell you how dominant Dan was, 50 laps led out of 55. So good stuff from him. And Freitas says, I have to be careful. He's doing donuts in the middle of the track there. And now he finally takes off.
Yeah, others have not finished the race yet, Joe. Remember, you're a minute ahead. Everybody else is still racing.
Absolutely. Things are starting to finish out here. It looks like Kimmo Suominen did cross the line in second. Todd Hansarenko is going to grab third. And I believe German Fanador has crossed the line for fourth, possibly. I'm going to have to double check on that. Don't want to call it too early. As guys
And James Stevenson is only just coming onto the main straight now to finish his race. So he's in second place. And it just goes to show how much of a lead Freitas had over these guys that we could laugh and make jokes, and then the others were still not finishing.
And where's Dexter Castro? I don't see Dexter Castro on the track. Did he already exit out?
I think he ran out of fuel, Joe. When he came across the finish line, he was only going half gas. Now, here's the thing, though. He was the final car on the lead lap, so I think he'll get to retain his third position. We'll have to wait and see how it all sorts out.
That will be one of the crazier developments of this league. This race has certainly given us an interesting ending to what was possibly not the most exciting of races during the middle portion. We're going to go to break, and then we'll come back and get all the results solidified and tell you what they were. But in the meantime, enjoy some music, and we'll come back with some interviews. Back after we just witnessed round 10 in the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series, and Dan Rash pulled home another one. But with Kimmo Suominen finishing second, excuse me, doesn't seem to be enough for him to try and get back into the championship. Dan, from our point of view, it was a pretty uneventful race. I mean, was there things going on for you?
It was eventful in the fact that this was a difficult track, so I felt like I was on edge the whole way. I still have a shirt drenched in sweat, even though it was pretty cold in my room. Just pushing really hard, and a lot of really tight maneuvers trying to get around traffic. Not because traffic was particularly bad, but because the track is so challenging.
We saw Kimmo that didn't quite have the pace for you, especially towards the end of the race where he dropped off a bit. I mean, would you say this is one of the rare ones where you've got him cornered, or was it just he kind of had a bad time with traffic?
I think this is a rare instance where I've been to several races at this track in this car, whereas I think he's only been driving the car for a year now, maybe, and he might not have raced at this track very much. So I think it's just a matter of me having some experience. I think if we were at a track that we've both been to equally, he's still quite a fast guy.
Well, it doesn't look like you're going to be able to take home a second championship, I believe, if I'm remembering right on the numbers. I mean, what are your thoughts on how this whole thing is gone this year with such new talent as Kimmo fighting you the whole way? I mean, did you enjoy this season, not enjoy it?
Oh, this is the best season I've had. I knew when he joined that he was going to be a lot of fun. He's a very, very fast guy, faster than me in any other car. But fortunately, in this car, I've spent so many hours into it that I can keep up with him. And I knew it was going to be a real challenge, especially towards the end of the season as he got the hang of the car, and he clearly has. This track being an exception, but he's clearly got a handle on the car in most tracks. And so for me, it was a definite blast, a lot of close battles, and it was good to see Todd come in as well because he's a really fast guy. I'm looking forward to next season. Maybe we'll have the same people and Darius Belowski as well.
Yes, and that'll make for some awesome racing. Well, thanks for talking to us, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time at Lime Rock Park.
All right, thanks for the broadcast, guys.
We've also got our fifth place finisher, Eric Smith, in here. Sam, would you like to ask a few questions of Eric?
Yes, certainly. Eric Smith, you finished second here last season, but got fifth this year, but it was a much more eventful race this year. Talk about the incident early on there.
It was kind of interesting. I thought German was spinning, and so I reacted according to that, but apparently he just missed a shift and rotated a little extra. But when I checked up, Patrick got into the back of me, and I got sent to the back of the pack.
Yes, and you were able to rally back up to fifth place without a caution. I'm sure you were hoping for a caution most of the race. Where do you think you could have placed had there been one?
I don't think I could have pulled off a podium. I didn't have the practice or the pace, but I don't know. Fourth. I was hoping German would run out of fuel, and then I did.
Yeah, we saw a lot of drivers pushing it on fuel there. Is that just something as a result of the track, the series, or why was that so prominent in this race, in your opinion?
I don't know. I don't remember the fuel ever being so close, and I never actually ran the numbers. I just kind of pitted when Dan did.
Hey, well, it seemed to work for you, being able to rally back up from the back to fifth place. Congratulations, and we wish you the best in Lime Rock.
All right, thank you.
Well, we also have our second place finisher in the ST class. Another championship winner is going to be with us. We have James Stevenson. And Richard, would you like to ask a few questions to James?
I'd love to. James, not the fastest today. No win for you. In fact, you finished more than a minute behind João Freitas, who was absolutely clobbering this track today. But a little bit of sweetness to the end there in the battle between yourself and Dexter.
Yeah, my aim today was just to go out there and drive at 9/10 and keep the thing on the track for the entire race and come home with a clean race, but it wasn't quite to be with Dexter getting into me there. But I don't know if he had damage or what towards the end there because I chased him down and he just fell off the track.
Yes, he did. We watched that piece of action when you pushed him into 5 and forced him into an error basically because he just couldn't hold it on there. The pressure was a little bit too much. But your thoughts on the race generally? I mean, to us, to be honest, there were not a lot of battles going around. It was all sort of follow the leader type of thing.
It seemed to be a bit of a race of attrition. There were people flying off left, right, and centre, and you just had to keep it on there to get home.
Yeah, it's a tough track, this one, isn't it? I mean, I know for a fact this is not one of your favourites, am I right?
Yeah, it's not my favourite. I never aim to go as fast as I can here. I always aim to finish, and that's pretty much the best you can do.
Yeah. Well, on the championship, there's nobody to catch you anyway. You've wrapped this one up already, and with this second place, it is absolutely beyond anybody to catch you now. So is that a nice feeling for you?
Yeah, it is. It's nice that there's no pressure going into races. You know, you just turn up and do what you want. But still, I'm in the hunt for the Mr. Clean Championship, so keeping it on the track is my high priority at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I look at your number of incidents here, I see that you had 4 incidents, which is basically the the tap at the back that Dexter gave you. Other than that, on track, absolutely clean.
Yeah, and that's all I could aim for today.
All right. Well, James, look, not a hell of a lot to talk about with you. You continued along your winning way. You didn't actually get the win today, but second place is as good as far as the championship is concerned. So congratulations, my friend, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time at Lime Rock Park.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Cheers. Back to you, Joe.
Well, we have our ST winner in here in Zhao Freitas, and we'll pull him in. Zhao, it seems like you more or less just embarrassed the entire field. Would you consider this track a specialty of yours?
Yes, Joe. I quite enjoy this track. I have a lot of laps under my belt around here, so I expected to win this one, honestly.
One of the questions that we kept asking up in the booth throughout the race as we were watching you is you were pushing incredibly hard, even up to the end when you had nearly a minute on everybody. What's the reason for pushing so hard despite the gap?
Yeah, I just wanted to push myself to the limits today, and I really wanted to test it to test the tires, these new tires in the long run. So, what better way to do it other than in a CSCS race?
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that because we did see that you didn't take tires, and it sounds like that was a conscious choice. Well, are you going to be back in 2 weeks' time at Lime Rock Park? And even more, are you going to be back next season to give James a run for his money?
I'm not sure yet, but if I have the time, certainly yes.
Excellent. Well, we'd hope to see you again. Congratulations once more on your first CESCS win, and thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Joe.
We have one more interview, a bonus one for today. We have Jarrett Lawson, the 4th place finisher in the ST class. Unfortunately, couldn't capitalize on Dexter running out of fuel, but still an excellent run. Jarrett, it seemed like you were having a pretty good battle at the end with, who was that? I believe it was William Randleman?
Yep, that was him. Yeah, I spun a couple times actually trying to catch him. I maybe got sent back 10 seconds twice, so I literally had to make up 30 seconds freaking to catch him, and I finally caught him with 40 seconds left on the clock. I was so happy.
Well, it's a well-earned finish. Are you proud of that 4th place?
I think that's honestly the best I can do. I mean, I had Zhao, James, and Dexter in front of me. 4th was and I'm nowhere near those guys, so 4th was honestly the best I could do, I think.
Well, I have to say we were pretty impressed with the progress that you were able to make. With this being Pearl Harbor Day, does it mean a little something special since you're in the armed forces?
Um, Honestly, no, because it's more of a, I'm in the army, so Pearl Harbor was kind of a Navy thing.
I gotcha.
Yeah, so I mean, it's it's still a day of remembrance though for everybody that got lost that day. So what I mean, but it holds no special meaning.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks for talking to us briefly. And once again, congratulations on that 4th place. And definitely hope we'll see you once more at Lime Rock Park.
Oh, definitely.
Well, guys, I'm sort of wary about asking what your thoughts are on this race because I know we have our own opinions on how this one went. But Richard, what were your feelings on how this played out?
Well, Joe, I've been thinking about that while you've been talking to the guys who had raced. And to be honest, we sit up here in the booth and we watch the race, at arm's length. We're not down there trying to make each corner. So you got to give credit to the guys. Everybody, this is a tough track and everybody knows it. Dan Rash said it very well, that he said that he was absolutely sweating, even though he was sitting in a room that was quite cool. So whilst we may have thought the race was, just in line, everybody one following the other, it was tough out there. And you got to give credit for these guys for giving it everything that they had. And, I just thought João Freitas was absolutely phenomenal today. There was just nothing to touch the pace that he showed here today. Dan Rash himself was also absolutely great. So, no, a good race. It's not one of the most exciting from our point of view or the viewer's point of view, but a good race nonetheless, Joe.
Sam, you're not a very common face in this series, so you have a little bit of an outsider's perspective. What did you think about the Laguna race?
Yeah, I've got to agree with Richard. It wasn't the most exciting spectacle from my standpoint, but I'm not too concerned because next race is Lime Rock, which is always entertaining. And then next season, we're already talking about a lot of new faces coming in to compete full-time and give these front runners a run for their money next season. So, hopefully this is the, I wouldn't say, dull race, but I have a feeling it's that we got good times coming ahead.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. Is that you could consider it a snoozer, but you have to look at the positive side. That with João Freitas throwing his hat in the ring and really showing what he's capable of, because we didn't get to see it at Road Atlanta. This could be really good things. Maybe the start of a new era for the CESES. But we're gonna wrap it up here. We want to thank some people first. We want to thank the sponsor, the Safecraft Racing, which is the main sponsor of the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series, who make real-world safety gear for motorsports, and they do a lot to make sure guys keep their noggins on. Also, thank you to Wes Eric, the organizer of this league. Thank you to the software and hardware that we use, iRacing.com, XSplit, Twitch TV, Audio-Technica, and AverMedia. Also, thanks to the team today, Sam, Richard, and Giancarlo. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, you can find it at www.globalsimracingchannel.com, along with archived races and race highlights. We're also on Twitter at GSR Channel and Facebook at facebook.com/globalsimracingchannel. A special thank you to Eric Ekholm, who provides us with much of our music. You can find it not only here on GSRC, but in TV commercials, movie trailers, iTunes, and Spotify. If you like our music, tell Eric where you heard it at ericekholm.com. Thanks to Casey Lalonde, who provides us with the music for our highlight videos. You can find more of his music at caseylalonde.bandcamp.com. Our next race is going to be at Lime Rock Park, and that is on December 21st. That kicks off at 6 p.m. Eastern. That is going to be the finale for the series. Even though both of the champions are crowned, that is going to be an exciting one because that thing is a bull ring. Our next broadcast, however, is going to be the Blondies MX5 World Tour. That is the final round of that series, and all is still to play for there. That takes place at Sebring on December 14th next week at 1 p.m. Eastern. Definitely catch that one. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and I'll see you on the track.